I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. To be a pessimist means that you have agreed that human life is an academic matter. So I'm forced to be an optimist. I'm forced to believe that we can survive whatever we must survive.
The table about to turn. The table about to turn. The table about to turn. Yeah. I've been flipping through my timeline.
Again, I was speaking to the tremendous contribution of Janelle Monáe's piece that we wanted you to hear, which is Turntables. And it is a way of talking about the revolutionary times that we are in and the tremendous opportunity to transform this system. It's a treat. It's a way to kind of reinvigorate our souls as we keep our gray matter going. And just as the earlier two renditions by the artists Little Baby and the Chicks talk about the tremendous social upheaval and what it offers for us. I am one of your moderators, and I'm sorry that I've gone into more explanation, but I'm trying to make up for what you can't do with Janelle Monáe. But I want to tell you what we have in store for you for later in the program. I want to bring on my co-moderator, Sandy Perry, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and some next steps. Maybe, Sandy? I wanted to let people know while we're waiting for Sandy that we are recording the session. And if you are not comfortable with that, please take a few seconds and change your name or you so that you won't be in the recording. But we wanted to make you aware of that. And I'm sure they're trying to behind the scenes get that up for you. But I wanted to make sure that people were aware of what we're trying to do in the session. Sandy, are you there?
Okay, thank you. I'm Sandy Perry. I am going to be a co-moderator today. I'm part of the Basic Needs Electoral Task Force of the League of Revolutionaries for New America. And I'm also very active in housing struggles in San Jose, California. I'm president of the Affordable Housing Network, and I'm also on the board of the South Bay Community Land Trust, which is going to be one of the speakers today. So I wanted to welcome everybody here. I did want to mention most organizations I'm in have what we call community agreements or ground rules for meeting. And we don't have a time to discuss and create all those right here and now, but I want to suggest some basic rules, which are that this is a discussion. It's not a debate. We're all here to learn. We want everyone to participate. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and to make comments and ask questions in the chat. And above all, listen and respect other people's points of view. This is an opportunity for us to come together. One of the biggest ways which our movement gets defeated is by falling apart in mutual accusations and criticisms and personal attacks, and we want to make sure we don't have that going on in this space. The purpose of this space is for us to edify each other, lift each other up, and educate each other so that we can move forward. We've got a powerful enemy, and we need all the unity that we can get. Thank you.
I think you're next, Sandy, to, I don't think.
Yes, I'm going to introduce Victoria King, who's going to be our opening speaker. She's a member of the League of Revolutionaries for New America and the Poor People's Campaign. She's a fourth-generation Oaklander who has worked for the Oakland Unified School District for 11 years as an academic mentor and a teacher's aide. She worked at Eastmont Library for 2 years, running a program for kids from Oakland Unified School District who needed additional help until the program was no longer funded. She walked her first precincts at age 7 and has been involved in volunteering in politics ever since. So I'd like to pass it over to Victoria King.
I see that we've got Poor People's Campaign in the house, cheering on folks. Vicki, are you having access?
Somebody needs to unmute Vicki. We can't hear her.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Oh,
Come on,
great. Sorry
O-Town.
about
Bring it,
that.
girl.
My name is Victoria King, and I'm honored to welcome everyone here this morning. I'm a member of the League of Revolutionaries for a New America and a member of the Poor People's Campaign. The pandemic has showed us a lot of things. Nationally, we saw that our government could offer free health care for all in the form of COVID testing, COVID vaccines, COVID-related mental health hotlines. We saw public schools, districts provide free food to families, even though schools were closed. Students were also provided free computers and internet services when during the regular school year, public school students are being asked to bring their own pencils and even toilet paper to school. We have seen small glimpses of what our society could be, what a good government could do. Here in California, we saw that our government could offer hotel rooms and meals to impoverished, unhoused people living in the streets and stop all evictions, foreclosures, utility shutoffs, and student loan defaults when people couldn't afford to pay. The state of California just agreed to pay all unpaid back rent for low-income renters since April 2020. Today's discussion is about how we must fight to have a government to demand accountability and to stay on course. Locally, there are a lot of really exciting things going on in Oakland right now, and we're making sure to be involved in all aspects and share the lessons with workers in the state and across the country. The extra money from COVID has led to a very lively and intense meetings about budgets and priorities at the school district and the city council. It's also great to have new members on the school board and city council that ran People's Campaign. This is good governance at work, right? The council and school district passed budgets this year that weren't excellent, but had a lot of positive changes, like taking 18 million and investing it in violence protection and from the police department, and the schools district voting for Black student reparations bill and allowing no new charter applications. This let us know that they can't be bought and that these people owe no one but us, the people who voted for them, and that's how it should be. I believe this would really change the face of Oakland. Before COVID, things were not good. Homelessness was rampant, jobs were scarce, and Trump was president. Then COVID hit and life went from bad to worse. But this gave us a lot of time to be quiet and reflect. It gave us time to see what a really devastating world we were living in. It allowed us to envision a better world. As we watch billionaires get ripped off our labor and they turn around and say we're lazy for not going back to work for 11 bucks an hour. They say people don't want to work. Quit to talk bad about unemployment, but never mention that several million Americans are dead from COVID. I'm sure that has a huge effect on the workforce. As we head out of COVID, it's time to create a society for all of us. We saw the kind of money that floated around during COVID, so we know there's an abundance that could be used to create a productive and equal world. We know it's possible. We can't allow things to just happen to us. The disgusting riot was another eye-opener, an eye-opener with no repercussions. And now they want to steal our right to vote. We have to get out in our cities and protest against this. We have to make calls, inform our communities, and vote. We all know what happened if the left decided to invade the White House. We don't have that luxury. Working with the Poor People's Campaign has been invaluable. We spend time learning how to unify and educate ourselves on all the injustices around us so we can go back and share this with our communities. So today, we'll be hearing from people who are working in various ways to build unity across racial lines and always with a focus on the marginalized. We will hear speakers who are representing disabled, poor, women, immigrants. You're going to hear from people who are actively fighting for a new vision that meets all human needs. I joined Learner about a year ago. I'm putting in work, but getting so much more out in return. I look forward to continuing the fight to create a society that benefits everyone, where all our basic needs are met. A world where technology is great, but not at the expense of humans. a world where we end exploitations and bring respect and dignity. Global unity is what we're fighting for. It's time to unite all the scattered revolutionaries because we are all fighting or struggling in different areas. So let's get this great meeting started that we have planned for you today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Victoria. Just reminding all of our tremendous guests that have come that you have come to the space where we'll be discussing demanding a government that meets human needs. Many of you are engaged in that process, and we are also, this is a space where we're definitely going to be trying to learn from one another, share experiences from our respective cities and the way that Victoria kicked us off with. But we also want to talk about how do we begin to put our heads together? How do we go forward in this process? I am really delighted to say that a part of that process is happening here in our own city. We just queued up a piece from our councilwoman, Carol Fife, but I wanted to just make a recognition that our District Dominique Walker was to be a presenter from Moms for Housing. We knew that she had challenges with the health issues around COVID. So important that she's getting the shot, and we want everybody else to get the shots, but she's not able to be with us today. But however, she is, because she's done it in the work that she has done over these past few years, and she's done it in the teaching that she does day in and day out. So what we're going to do is instead hear from our councilwoman, Carol Fife, to help hopefully kick off this session. And I hope that the team has been making some adjustments in the back to ensure that some of these struggles that we are looking at, what we call, it's a combination of, we've gotten progressives elected into public office, and they're working on public policy front. But we have to combine those things with the work and the struggle to with the social movement and building. And so I think that amongst the things that we need to make sure that we do is kind of look at some of the lessons that our representatives are encountering. And we wanted to play a clip from our councilwoman from as recent as last night. This is a posting she put on Facebook, and in answer to national attacks on our city progressives from Fox News and ABC. And I don't know if that's queued up yet, but it would be good to have that come on.
Carol Fife. Recently on Facebook, I made a post about a silent coup happening in Oakland. I did not expect for people to react in the way that they did, which is cool. It's cool, but I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta answer some questions because people are concerned. And rightfully so. Folks should be concerned. I'm concerned. I'm concerned that there have been a lot of untruths being told in the media, not just in Oakland, but around the country about what's happening in Oakland in public safety. It's been stated that the city council, the majority of the city council, I should say, irresponsibly defunded the police department. And I can't state enough that that is one of the furthest things from the truth that's been stated. It's actually quite right wing to quote such fake and absurd news when the Oakland Police Department received $38.5 million more than they did in the previous budget cycle. But even more concerning, and I'll get into it, I wish I could pull up my post, Carol Fife, to explain exactly just how egregious what's happening in Oakland is. But I'll just say a few things, because this all started with our budget cycle, right? It all started because the council president's budget team, along with the majority of the city council of Oakland, did not take money away from the police department. Nobody went to their bank account and said, give us this money. We're going to take it and spend it on bubbles and licorice. What happened is the mayor proposed a certain dollar amount to go into future academies. And instead of spending that money on additional academies, because right now, as typical, the city of Oakland has 4 academies, 2 per year. And the city council decided to keep that the same and try something different that's never really happened before, which is to invest in violence prevention. Violence prevention. This does not have to be a fight. This does not have to be an argument or a dispute or a temper tantrum on Good Morning America and ABC and wherever else this is playing out. The reality is, if we want to really stop crime from happening, and when I say crime, I'm talking about the things that a lot of people complain about, a lot of things like property crime, noise violations, the sideshows, those kinds of things. If they wanted to address that, they could. But what we want to do is invest in things that actually change people's lives for the better, so that generation after generation, people are seeing an improvement in their status of living and quality of life. That's what we want to change. And that has not been invested in. And in fact, that's what's been defunded in Oakland. The lives of people who are working class or poor, who don't ever have an opportunity to move ahead because everything around them is falling apart. And that's what disinvestment in communities do. So when I said that we are experiencing a silent coup in Oakland, it is because the military arm of our law enforcement agency is getting active in political fights where there were none, where there was not a fight between the Department of Violence Prevention and the city council. Now we have this whole fissure of people who are caught up in this argument because the police are mad that they didn't get as much money as they wanted to get, as much money as the mayor allocated. Nothing was taken away. They just didn't get as much as they wanted to get. They still have a $400 million plus budget. There are not 400 million criminals. Well, it depends if you count the capitalists, but they're not that many individuals engaged in the type of behavior that would warrant a budget where nothing is still happening. There is nothing happening that's impacting the crime on the streets right now. Nothing is happening to put a dent in the homicides that are happening. I just watched a press conference from June 28th that listed all of the people that lost their lives to gun violence this year. But that was with a police department that was fully funded. Fully funded. So I'm confused. Somebody got to do the math for me. With $300+ million in the last budget, why weren't those homicides stopped? Why are you listing people who have been killed when you have hundreds of millions of dollars? And if you need more, please, I want to know what that number is so we can know which Head Start programs to defund, which after school programs to defund, which housing NOFAs to defund, what projects, what other kinds of community projects and road repair and trash cleanup do we need to defund? How much? So that we can put that on the table. How much of the general fund do we need to give 60% of our general purpose fund? Do we need to invest 70% of our general purpose fund to get some semblance of safety here? I would argue that it's insatiable, that there is no number, because the goal is not to stop crime, not that kind of crime, because that's easy to solve. You give resources where those things are happening. With $330 million, you could pay every person that's shooting a gun a living wage and give them housing, and it would stop. I almost guarantee it. But there's something behind this, right? Crime pays. I've been saying that a lot lately. Crime pays. And you know who it pays the least? The ones who we get that keep getting locked up. They get paid the least out of all of the things that we talk about with crime. But I'm not going to get into all those details. I want to just read a little bit so I can explain what my post meant. So I'm going to define
Okay, thank you. I just want to give a little bit of context. For those of you who are not from Oakland or the Bay Area, the person that you heard presenting was our councilwoman, newly elected Councilwoman Carol Fife. For those of you who are not aware, she has been the director at ACE and been involved in ACE for about 10 years. And she, along with a number of other extraordinarily courageous women, were a part of a spectacular housing takeover in 2019, where we had thousands, where we have, like many other cities, thousands of people who are unhoused, and yet many thousands of unoccupied housing. And the women made both a practical statement and a political statement in the takeover of that property to bring the children and women off the streets into housing. And Carol Fife was then recruited later after the women successfully secured the housing and won it over from one of the large hedge funds in the country, to politicize that and then run as a representative for our city. So she is one of several progressive representatives who has really made an effort to demonstrate what government accountability represents. These things, we think, demonstrate the example of building from the social movement and building from a reimagining of investing those resources. I wanted to make sure to bring those things together because we're going to have other speakers, and I'm going to turn it over to my co-host and moderator to bring in some of those other speakers today who we'll be hearing from. But we'll want to deepen this conversation in the Q&A. And I thank you for for being patient with us with our different technical challenges. But after all, we're freedom fighters, so that's a small issue considering what we're up against and what we need to do. I'm going to turn it over to you now, Sandy.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for bringing us that video from Oakland. These kinds of battles are happening all over the country, all over the Bay Area, and they're happening here in San Jose. We aren't quite as advanced as Oakland because we don't have great leaders like Carol Fife on our as our elected officials. Our people are a little more timid, let me just put it that way. And but I wanted to introduce at this time Liz Gonzalez. She's the president of the South Bay Community Land Trust, and forming a community land trust has been one of the main forms of resistance in the South Bay to the question of gentrification, displacement of people being forced out of their homes who have lived here for generations, and people being forced to be become homeless. I mean, we have right now in San Jose, they say that 2 people become homeless every time they house 1 person who's homeless now. So I'd like to turn it over to Liz Gonzalez, and I hope the host can unmute her and she can tell us a little bit about what South Bay Community Land Trust is all about. So go ahead, Liz.
Thank you so much, Sandy, and thank you everyone for having the South Bay Community Land Trust part of this discussion today. I want to start by just naming that I'm calling in from San Jose, California, and the territories of the Muwekma Ohlone people who are still very much here and present. And I also want to say that I am definitely not an expert in all things community land trust related, but I think as a group, you know, we're working our way there. And we really started down this road because it was, you know, the only model that we've come across that really changes the transactional nature of housing like we know it here in this country. And we, as I'm sure many of you have been shouting that housing is a human right for years. But as long as the exclusionary and racist nature of the housing system that we have in the United States continues uninterrupted, we're not really going to see that as a reality. As long as people and families, elders, children are so easily able to be thrown out on the street because rent hasn't been paid, then housing is not a human right. It's a commodity that still, you know, that still has some value to the owner, whether people are living in the home or not. And that can continue to be the case here. Like folks have said, we have soaring homelessness, and that's not just an issue here in the area, it's across the whole country, only made worse by COVID-19 and this country's refusal to just care for human life. And so the community land trust model really prioritizes people and community decision-making for us, for tenants, for people who, you know, largely have not had much decision-making power around our housing. I know we had the slides up earlier. Sorry if they don't go back up. It's always nicer to also be able to see something while I'm just rambling on over here. But I'll go briefly into how we started because we have folks in our group who have been organizing for housing rights, tenant rights for the unhoused for many, many years here in the area. And most of the founding members of the South Bay Community Land Trust were also involved in a multi-year struggle to increase tenant protections in the city of San Jose. After 4 years, we won better protections. We won just cause eviction protections, really also vibing with the other cities in the Bay Area who were also struggling for these things and doing it together. But just months after this huge victory, the same council that approved these things announced in one meeting without discussion that they were going to enter into negotiations with the tech giant Google for the sale of public lands near downtown San Jose for what could be the largest campus for Google in the world, and just 14 miles from Google headquarters in Mountain View, California. Something completely unnecessary. It was really like a punch in the gut to all the folks who had struggled for the last 4 years to hear that decision. And so we began to organize against this kind of development, knowing from our own experience growing up here in this area where tech also has come up, that tech does not bring us all up, that it creates more inequality that our families have suffered through its ups and downs. And although we're surrounded by all this wealth, our families don't have access to that wealth. And that tech companies are really harming our communities with the secretive work that they do. And so we just asked each other, we asked our friends and family, our community, what could we do on public lands other than hand it over to this private company? And people really got excited and talked about, you know, what we all talk about. We need affordable housing, we need community centers, youth centers, medical centers, gardens, things that benefit everyone and that we desperately need. And so the Community Land Trust really came in line with that vision. You can go to slide 3. Thank you. Really fell in line with that vision. Also, the history of community land trusts in the country also resonated with us because it's rooted in the civil rights struggle. The first community land trust was created by farmers in the South called First Communities, Inc. And it just demonstrates, you know, that we, everyday people, are just as capable as anyone else to envision and determine, design what our communities should look like and determine what we need. And so now we could go into, you know, what is a community land trust? It's an organization that is formed to acquire land and housing and change the rules, take it out of the market so that it could never again be sold for profits and instead be used to meet the community needs and create permanently affordable housing. And we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, and this is how we orient ourselves in our work around the 5 pillars of housing justice that came out of the Right to the City Alliance. I'm going to read these so I don't mess it up. The first pillar is community control. It states that housing and land should be owned and controlled through democratic structures and processes by those who live there. Second is that housing must be accessible and inclusive. Historically marginalized populations across race, class, ability, and gender must be affirmatively outreached to, included as residents, and participate in decision-making related to their housing and community. The third pillar is long-term stability and protection from displacement, because people need to be protected from discrimination and market forces causing displacement and changes in government policy over the long term. Fourth pillar is health and sustainability, which means that housing should foster healthy, sustainable communities from interpersonally to structurally. It should maximize the well-being of residents, and housing should center land stewardship in its design, construction, as well as renewable energy and safe, affordable water and food systems. So very holistic. The last pillar is affordability, that housing must be truly affordable. After paying housing costs, including utilities, people must still have enough to cover basic needs so that they can thrive, fully thrive. And a community land trust is organized very intentionally to split, to have like a split power. The board of the community land trust is made up of 1/3 residents who live on the CLT, 1/3 of residents who live in the surrounding community, and 1/3 experts or other advisors. Go to the next slide. I'll just talk briefly. In our work, we are operating in this lane of preservation. And really it is, in our opinion, right, the most effective and cost-effective strategy to keep people housed, to prevent homelessness, but is heavily underfunded and under-resourced. And we always hear that it's not viable, it's not scalable. And we know that that is a lie, especially when our whole city across multiple departments work together to make, to fulfill the will of what Google wanted them to do here with their potential development. So this can be done, and we need to continue to push and advocate for those monies, both public and private, to make this happen and make it accessible for everyone. And as we talk more about this work and get deeper into it, we're finding that we really don't fall into preservation because truly affordable housing, permanently affordable housing, doesn't really already exist. So we're looking for a new word. If y'all have any suggestions, let us know. We're sort of liking redeeming housing, liberating housing maybe, but we're finding that we don't completely fit into this area, and that the legacy of CLTs have created a new way. And the last slide is just more information on how to contact us, and to really urge you all to support other CLTs across the country. There's hundreds of them. There's a very strong network here in the Bay Area, and it is all our responsibility to make sure that everyone has dignified housing. And this is one way that we're bringing that forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. I was just going to write it in the chat, but since we've got a little dead space here, I thought I'd throw that in.
All right. Thank you for unmuting me. And wow, nice presentation, Liz. I know we have probably pandemic has given us all new credentials as Zoom experts. We were in the past, we were community organizers, and now we can all add Zoom to our credentials as well. That's great. I know it's going to really make for a great time when we have an opportunity to talk further. Let me just ask, is Leticia Vasquez Wilson, is she in the house?
Yes, she is.
All right. Well, let me give you an intro, sister. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to show you love, if that's all right. All right.
Hey.
This woman is like everybody here, but particularly these warriors, is a board member of the Central Basin Municipal Water District in Los Angeles. Ms. Wilson, Vasquez Wilson, successfully resisted a restraining order against her, speaking out about violations of California's Safe Drinking Water Act. She has spoken very publicly about the issues of affordability and safety of water in Southeast Los Angeles County. She has protested Assemblymember Cristina Garcia, who has been pushing to privatize the water in the region, and criticize the city of Downey for its do-little approach to high levels of PFAS contamination in its groundwater. Sounds like my kind of girl. Yes. Bring it.
Hey.
All right.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today. We're excited. I also have with me attorney Ron Wilson, who is representing me on this matter. And I want to give a little bit of background on, how we got to this point. In 2019, Assemblywoman Cristina Garcia introduced AB 756, which basically created a process for water retailers to report levels of PFAS, PFAS and PFOA, which are contaminants that are often found in our water supply. So AB 756 was passed in the 2019 legislative cycle. The governor signed it into law, and all of our water retailers in California are now required to test for these specific contaminants. And the bill required that the retailers do one of three things: that the retailers either shut down the well, that they do something called blending. So they have to blend the water from those water wells with cleaner water to dilute the contaminant, and also notify the community. Well, unfortunately, we had a number of retailers in our region that were not doing any of that. And so we actually have a progressive media outlet in our region called Political Life. It's political-life.com, who took an interest in this issue and wanted to start basically writing articles and talking to the public about the levels of the high levels of this contaminant in their local water supplies. So he invited me to basically do an interview, actually several interviews, to talk about the issue in the community. So we did that, and those videos focused on, one of them focused on the city of Downey's water supply, which had high levels of this contaminant, and also a small water district in the city of Pico Rivera called the Pico Water District, who also reported excessive levels of this contaminant in their water supply. And so we embarked on this effort to really get the community involved and to put pressure on these entities to do the right thing and to either clean up their water or start working with the community on a strategy to get clean water to the residents. And unfortunately, those water, or those retailers, were not very happy about us talking to the community about the contaminants. And they actually started off with sending us letters from attorneys. There were cease and desist letters, basically trying to bully us into removing the videos from YouTube and or stopping us from moving forward with any other videos. And so Rodolfo Cortez and I, who he's the progressive writer in our region, again, it's political-life.com. We understood that this was an effort to silence us, and we continued to do the work of the people, which was to put pressure on these folks to clean up the water supply. And we started organizing folks. And so lo and behold, probably a month and a half later, I got a call from a member of a journalist who wanted me to comment on this lawsuit that had been filed against me. I actually have my attorney here who can talk a little bit about the lawsuit, but the efforts are basically to silence and prevent us from, speaking out about this water contamination issue. And do you want to talk a little bit about the lawsuit?
Sure.
This is attorney Ronald Wilson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Or good afternoon, I guess, maybe it's.
They're no
sure.
Yeah.
So this is an example of a total abuse of their public office. These elected officials are suing a fellow board member. The object of the lawsuit is to stop her from talking about clean water, although she's on a water board, and to stop her from talking about an illegal tax imposed by the board on their customers. So these are obviously very important issues for the customers. They're objective issues. And the people suing her, mainly her own board, do not claim that she said anything that was false. So they're using the resources of the public agency to pay this lawyer, probably what will wind up being hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the sole objective of the lawsuit is to stop her from speaking about these two issues. Now, when I bring up the issue of First Amendment and she has a right to speak, their response to that is, oh, well, we're not really trying to stop her from speaking, although part of the lawsuit is that they don't want her to even identify herself as an elected member of the board. Quite apart from any content, just don't tell people you're an elected member of the board. And when I explained to the lawyer that, look, she doesn't need permission to identify herself as a member of the board, she can do that by virtue of winning her seat. She got 30,000 votes to win her seat, so she can do that. Secondly, I said she has a First Amendment right. What are you guys talking about? She can speak about these issues. She's fully authorized. Well, the problem is she's using our stationery, and she can't use our stationery. And she's claiming that she's speaking on behalf of the entire board, and she's confusing people and misleading people. Okay, I listened to the video. I read the letters. Nowhere does she say that. So what are you talking about? Well, people are confused. Okay, what people? People. Well, can you name one of them? No, not really. Oh, other agencies, other cities and agencies. And she's damaging our image, and in the future we might be sued, and so we need to sue her and stop her.
Yeah, so we've actually gone down, I think, twice to basically defend an emergency restraining order, two emergency restraining orders that were filed, and the judges ruled in our favor. They basically rejected the request for a restraining order on both occasions. And, we've explained that, the courts are there to actually protect free speech, not to limit. And so we've been, doing our part to put pressure on this water agency to drop the lawsuit. The lawsuit is still pending. Do you want to talk a little bit more about moving forward, how?
Oh, yeah. Well, at this point, it's a function of, I think, their lawyer trying to make money, because they don't rely on any evidence. There is no evidence. The evidence is many other board members, and we submitted this evidence to the judges, because two separate judges on two separate occasions denied their request for a restraining order. Wow. Why? Because there is no emergency. Why? Because they have no evidence. The only evidence is that many different board members have been using the stationery to state all kinds of positions without any board approval. The evidence is there's no damage. You can say what you want to say about a public entity. There is no such thing in law as defamation of a public entity. I can make public statements that I hate California, or I hate Los Angeles, or they're bad places. There's no lawsuit they can bring against me for defaming a public entity. It's just not a right that anyone has in law. Secondly, they have no damages, because even the people that they threaten might sue them because of her statements, those are all public entities. And there is no such claim that you're hurting my image as a public entity. So, and then they claim, they just straight up lied to the judge, claiming that she violated the administrative code by using their stationery. And they cite several sections of the administrative code. And of course, in the paperwork, we go through that and show there is no violation of the administrative code. She's doing nothing different from any other board member. And you don't have a lawsuit for defamation. So why are you doing this? And all it comes back to is the lawyers trying to make money. That's all I get out of it. And so they have the power to use public funds to harass her and run up a big bill. The lawyer doesn't care because he gets paid. And then at the end of it, they're going to have to pay me too, because under the law, when you bring a suit against a public official, if the public official is accused of doing something within the course and scope of their office, then you have to defend that public official and pay the attorney's fee. So they're going to wind up having to pay both sides. The typical example is a cop does something wrong and the family sues the police department. They're going to get a lawyer to defend that cop. That's what they do. The bus driver causes an auto accident, the bus driver gets sued, they're going to get a lawyer to defend it. So in this particular case, she's accused of speaking about public issues, clean water and water rates. Mm-hmm. Their response is, that's not within the course and scope of your duties. Well, of course it is, you fool. What are you talking about? How could it not be? But they have although they don't have the right to do this, they control the purse strings. They have a majority vote. They don't like Ms. Vasquez, primarily because she's a whistleblower. She's been talking about lots of wrongdoing. So,
yeah, and so to sum it up, I really encourage you all to read some of the articles on www.political-life.com. They're there, the videos are there. And I also encourage you to learn more about AB 756, which was passed in the legislature in 2019, that really gives more detail about those contaminants, PFAS and PFOA. I think we should all be aware of the levels of PFAS and PFOA that are in our local water supplies. This bill also requires our water retailers to post that information about the amounts of that contaminant in their annual water reports that are typically provided to the residents of the communities that they serve. So we're out here fighting the good fight. You know, the other issue is the issue of privatization, which we actually talked about maybe a month ago. I think it was on one of these podcasts. But you know, that's another battle that we have going on in our communities in Southern California.
First of all,
water is a human right, and it should never be privatized.
Let me just say, you know, bravo. I mean, clap. I am, you and Elizabeth have really knocked the ball out the court, and certainly our councilwoman as well. And I think one of the things that this session is that we want to now kind of move into with Q&A. So you actually, I hope you will elaborate more. There may be questions from the chat. I'm going to ask you if you or your team could put that, if you haven't already, put the AB 756 in the chat so that people can check that out and get more information. I'm going to thank you just so very much for your work. And one of the things that this session is really looking at is trying to examine is that, you know, we know that our country is on the road to hell in a handbasket, quickly moving towards a more fascistic state. And we know that on the municipal levels, we are watching residents, you know, increasingly elevating, not only challenging those attacks on rights, but also in defending democracy, but also elevating and advancing solutions in the way that Elizabeth was speaking to. So one of the things that we wanted to try to do, and Sandy, I'm going to ask you to keep me honest. I know we're kind of okay, but I want to make sure we bring in our other speakers and we get all of them in the discussion. But we got about 10 minutes, and we wanted to kind of drill down a bit more on a couple of questions that are definitely implied in the work that you're doing. And I'm going to ask Sandy if there's been any other questions that jump out at him, if he can just let me know. But a couple of the questions we wanted to ask Elizabeth first is, can you talk a little bit more about this question of what is decommodification of housing? Why? I mean, it's a big word. Why should we care about it? I mean, is it pie in the sky? What do you think? That'll be one question. And then our second question, I want to go to the good governance. So please, if you, do you need help unmuting or do we have to do that on our end?
You have to
Elizabeth.
you have to
Do
unmute
that on their
yourself.
end.
Liz, I think you may have to unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself.
It's not working.
Go to look at the microphone icon down in the corner. You see a red line through it. That shows that you're muted. So put your mouse on that icon and press it, and you will be unmuted. That's how you open your microphone.
Yeah, well, I had to do it several times. It wasn't helping, wasn't showing much love.
Ms. Gonzalez, do you see that? It didn't unmute? It didn't open?
Okay.
All right, just a moment.
Alan, I've just changed the setting.
Okay, got it.
We'll now be
Okay,
able to.
there we go.
Thank you.
All right, we have had a convention
Sorry
on
for the
unmuting.
clumsiness.
Come on, that's all right. Come on, Liz.
Definitely.
Thank
I'm
you.
all struggling on this Zoom thing. Don't know how to figure this out. But yes, I mean, I think, you know, because we're so used to one way of doing things, we haven't allowed ourselves to imagine other ways. You know, we just live our lives going like, this is the way. We have to pay rent, we have to work hard, we have to struggle, we have to have 3 jobs, and pile up in an apartment that has cockroaches and mold, and a landlord that doesn't ever fix any problems. And that should just hurt everybody's heart. Like, how do we continue to pay people for putting us in dangerous situations? You know, we just had the governor say that he's going to pay all landlords all their rent. And while I'm glad, because it's going to take a tremendous burden off tenants, why are we still going to pay people who allow others to live in those kind of conditions? It's disgusting to me. And we can do this another way, but for us, it feels like such a foreign idea, because we're told that you have to work hard to earn something. But housing is something that we you know, should have the right to, just because we're human beings without having to pay for it. I think, of course, there's some kind of transition to that dream, but we have to talk about it, because this is not a natural thing. The market is not a natural thing. It's a man-made, man-manipulated thing that we know carries the biases and the racism of the people who imagined it. And it's not something that comes from us ourselves. And it's straight up greed, like, you know, speculation. It's like, we're going to buy this and sell it for more, and we don't care anything about the condition. We're not going to upkeep it. We just want to get more money. There is no other reason there. And yeah, housing cannot be the way that we continue to build wealth in this country, because it's fundamental, it's foundational to all of society.
Thank you so much. I don't know if there's others that want to chime in on that, but yes, so I want to leave some space for others to chime in on that as well. And good definitions and good probing, pushing us about reimagining a new reality.
I've also heard it said that water is a human right, and water needs to be decommodified also. Maybe Ms. Vasquez-Wilson can address that question.
Yes, please.
Sure, absolutely. The California legislature actually back in 2012 passed a resolution declaring water a human right. And it was a great resolution. I think the sentiments obviously are the fact that they supported, you know, such an idea is great. Unfortunately, the California legislature has done absolutely nothing, you know, to move that, you know, ball forward. We have a number of investor-owned utilities that that I actually learned about during my time as a council member. I'm a former mayor and council member in the city of Linwood in Los Angeles County. It's neighboring the city of Compton. And it was during that time that I received tons of complaints from residents who were serviced by an investor-owned private utility in the region. And at that point, which was almost 15 years ago, I found out that they were charging 4 times higher than the city was charging, because the city also owned and operated its own water wells and was a retailer is a retailer for a portion of the city. So as I started doing my research on these investor-owned utilities, I learned that all of the investor-owned utilities in our region have a goal that's first and foremost laid out in their FEC filings and their mission statements, that their whole purpose is to generate a profit for their shareholders. And so, that trickles down to the customer as basically, higher water rates. And so, I'm of the opinion that if the California legislature is in fact interested, in water as a human right, that they would do something about, regulating the profits that these investor-owned utilities can make, when they sell water to our customers. There's tons of things that the California legislature can do. One of the things that I have seen in legislation that is being consistently introduced in the legislature here in California is this whole idea of public-private partnerships between public water systems and private water systems. That, again, is just another pathway towards privatization. So yeah, that's a big issue. I think we need to certainly keep our eye on that ball and, advocate at every level when possible against the privatization and the profiteering of our water. It's just such an essential thing that we need. Water is life.
Absolutely.
Amen.
If I could just add, not to this issue. Well, first of all, the notion that someone would be shut down from is carrying out their public duty of informing the public of threats on this level. I mean, it's a fundamental issue of not only muzzling your voice, but really stopping the flow of information that we need to make informed decisions. I wanted to circle back around and kind of underscore how this Oakland piece comes in. And one is in our city, so again, both around housing, but we got water issues or contamination issues as well. But around the housing issue, what they have found is that it would take about someone would have to be earning $48 an hour, almost $50 an hour, to be able to afford a median income rent. The rents are too damn high. And that earlier conversation that Elizabeth was sharing, I mean, it was part of the pressure points that helped to inform the movement of these women to, secure the housing that they need and let government figure out that it has to, insert itself on behalf of the people to protect us. We know that an O figure is that for every empty resident, there are homeless people that could use those pieces. And the United Nations has really highlighted this question of special rapporteur that Oakland, as well as Los Angeles, Vancouver, Chicago, a whole host of other cities, I'm told, probably much of the Bay Area, are in these areas that are designated hedge cities. What is a hedge city? Well, that just means that our various municipalities give these corporations humongous breaks, our public dollars, to not house our people. It's not, it's not rocket science. It is about the way that Elizabeth was saying, we are so used to carrying the load of, well, this is the status quo and it cannot be done any other way. But fortunately, on a municipal level, increasingly, and then those on a municipal level, people are protesting that and challenging that and elevating new demands for along the lines of housing as a human right, or of course, water as a human right, and more than a slogan, how do we move to that being actual policy and actually being implemented? And I think that that's the importance of not only the policy part of the community land trust, but also the human beings that are working to elevate these solutions about housing. We know, all of us know that, there's at least 40 million people who could be displaced tomorrow by the impact of the pandemic. And guess what? Like Vicki said in her opening comments, government stepped up and held off the threat. We need more than just holding off the threat, though. We need a reimagining and a restructuring. And I think that a part of this question, many of the people in our country have an idea that government that is corporate run, that last sentence isn't discussed, is harming us. But government by and for the people, that manages things for people and stops trying to manage and oppress people, that's what we need to be working towards. So I think that we're seeing in the instance of Ms. Vasquez Wilson, and certainly in Carol, and also I want to give a shout out to Nikki Fortunato Boss. They put forward alternative budgets, you guys. I've actually never seen this in their social media, where they inform their districts, this is what a budget for the people could look like. Now, those budgets didn't win, but those were extraordinarily important. So that engagement on that level is very, very important. And it's the direction of government that is accountable to the people, as opposed to government that serves corporations. Okay, I'm sure I'm over my time. And you need to do, Sandy, do you want to do anything before we shift to the next set of presenters?
I did want to have, there was one more question that came up in the chat for Liz, and this is, how can homeless people participate in a community land trust? So do you have can you address that for us, Liz?
Yes, help me out to fill it any blanks, Sandy. But the community land trust targets extremely low income. We also focus on no income, right? And to find a way to make it work with the different funding sources so that people who don't have an income can also be included in the housing. We're barely at the point of getting a first property, like at the initial stages. So we haven't done this ourselves yet, but there are different strategies where you pull in various sources of funding that is not restricted. So we really are looking to our community to make this successful, so that people who don't have income, who are unhoused, who are undocumented, have the same access to CLT units in the future and become owners, if they choose to, of those units.
Yeah, and I think the whole idea of community land trust is it's community. And that means people who are have higher income actually help to subsidize the people who have lower incomes. And actually, if you look at the models for social housing, which are around the world in places like Singapore and Vienna, that's the way they work. Higher income residents actually subsidize the lower income. So it pencils out for everyone. And it's a very good model. At this point, what I'd like to do, and I'm sort of departing from our script a little bit, so I hope my co-moderators will forgive me, but I was going to see if we could have an interlude, and this is just strictly for, because I think we need a little break, have an interlude and have our poet, who is scheduled to come on around now. Her name is Michelle Salturos. She's a first-generation Greek-American revolutionary slam poet from the Chicago, Illinois area. She's loud and direct. She's unwilling to give up, just like her ancestors. And she aims with her art to elicit reactions and get people thinking. So I'd like to introduce, if she's available right now, Michelle Salturos. Are you there, Michelle? And can you get yourself unmuted? All right, excellent.
Welcome.
you so much for having me.
I saw you on YouTube. You have some great poems posted on YouTube. You have a great one about fascism. It's very good, based on your family's experience.
Thank you. Yeah, so today I brought a piece about Flint, Michigan that I've performed before. Seemed to maybe kind of fit in, so
nice.
Jump right into it. To Flint with all my gasoline. Land taken without permission, attempted poisoning to non-existence, they hope to bury you. Erase you away like you never walked your children to the playground here, walked your lover through Wilson Park here, never drove to work here, took a night off, watched the stars you could make out a little tipsy under the moon, drawing out constellations. They wanted you gone, with no option to move. Wanted your payment, in fear you lose everything. This is what terrorism is when the rich white man does it. Car parts over children, image over fact. This is calling mothers liars to their face, thinking it would convince them they were wrong. He thought he could silence you, thought he could drown your protest with murky intentions, band together with other monsters to make you feel crazy, to make you feel fake. They wanted to rewrite the map with no consequence. They forgot. Small city of warriors, they pushed you to the battleground against your will. Didn't realize your survival skills, didn't know your fight. Never told that the gun is only as scary as what you put in it, the fire only as dangerous as what you fuel it with. They forgot why you're named Flint, forgot that if you're pushed too hard, you'll set the whole thing ablaze. Thank you.
Wow.
All right.
Right. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Not, excuse me. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you. I just connected. It's from Weinberg's. I have question for whoever can answer to me, because I try to understand what the topic, a great topic, and thank you so much. I will be very brief, okay? In my question, and please excuse my English, because English is my third language. I speak Russian and I speak Polish, and English I learn. I still learn English language, which I'm very honored to learn. My question is, I phone from Illinois, from state of Illinois. And you know what bothering me, and it's not only my opinion, I phone from the Rogers Park area in Chicago. You know, water in our area, at least in our kitchen and faucets, it smell, you know, I understand it needs to be disinfected. I understand that, but it smells horrible. It smells like chlorine, like lead chlorine together. I don't know, I try to phone Alderman, our great Alderman, quote unquote. She never respond back, never. You know, I try to phone to City Hall. They put you on hold and it's answering machine and blah, blah, blah. So I'm so glad you somehow related, you know, to this topic. Thank you. And maybe you can, thank you. And maybe you can
there's
somehow
people here.
give
attention
to the question to the, maybe you can phone Alderman, or maybe you can phone to City Hall, and tell in Rogers Park, and we phoned several times, and it's impossible to sometimes come to kitchen because it smells like lead, rotten lead together with chlorine. And
we understand, ma'am.
We get it. Give me 1 second.
Actually,
1 second. 1 second. I promise. Give me 1 second.
But we actually have people in Chicago here who actually you could be able to link up with. And
you know, my question is, maybe somebody have more information to absolutely minimize chlorine in our water, even filter, you know, filter, you put filter on faucet, it's absolutely not work yet. It so smell rotten chlorine, and you cannot cook, you cannot take shower, you cannot drink water, not even boiled water, and it still smell like rotten chlorine. Maybe somebody can help to limit chlorine and make water and
Okay,
make water
do
clean.
you want to
Thank
address
you.
that, Michelle, or should we just,
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And there's somebody from Chicago who probably
I
can
want to
put
listen.
their,
Thank you.
Michelle is from
thank you.
Chicago.
Yes, that we could have them put their name and contact information if they would like in the chat. And we know that these problems, that's the whole point. They're going on all over the country. And I think the way that you just gave that very vivid example about, you know, what people are suffering through, oftentimes by themselves, but also communities coming together. So we really appreciate that as well. We got a couple other great additional presenters that other people might also like to hear from. So Sandy, I'm going to turn it over to you and just say maybe we can use the turntable. Let me say to the poet, thank you, much love. Thank you so much for that.
That was beautiful.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
So at this point, we have a second panel, and we also have a special guest here from Venice. Her name is Lydia Ponce. She's also a member of the American Indian movement. I don't have a lot of information about her. I didn't receive a lot of information ahead of time, but I have heard that she's deeply involved in this whole struggle of the homeless in Venice to survive against merciless attacks by city and local officials. And so I'm going to ask her to speak briefly about that. We have a couple of other panelists also that I'll introduce, but let me let Lydia speak briefly on the Venice situation.
Sandy, and for people who are not aware, we're talking about Venice, Los Angeles, and it's a place where a big struggle is happening, right?
Yes. Let me go ahead and drop some of my information in the chat. Now, good afternoon, relatives. I'm calling from Sagna, Tongva land, unceded lands like this entire continent. And I am involved with housing. However, my recent work has cross intersection between housing and water issues. And I'm going to give myself a minute and a half because I'd like to share my time, a minute and a half, with Peggy Lee Kennedy. I am involved in housing. However, my work has carried me to intersect on the two human rights, water and housing. We live in the coastal zone, 2 miles in, wherever the ocean is, dual jurisdiction protections of housing, of the environment. And there's a lot of laws that are supposed to protect state, county, and city. With the 58 counties in the makeup California, we all are connected and dependent on each other for housing and for clean water and clean food and all the other things that come with that, you know, health and education, all of that. So let me just say that there is a struggle right now for clean drinking water globally, but locally in the state of California, the 58 counties need to get to their feet and rise to the occasion about desalination. Our governor is proposing $2 billion to a private industry by the name of Poseidon. And the short of it is, it's a company from Canada. And if they approve this one desalination plant in Huntington Beach, they're going to approve another one in El Segundo. They're going to approve another one, about another 8 or 9 up and down our entire coast. Why is it important to the 58 counties? That $2 billion statewide funding is supposed to be spent on housing. If we spend it on housing, then we will receive an additional $880 million, almost $1 billion, from the federal government in subsidies. Now, I know that the land trusts need funding, as do a local struggle, the reclaimers in El Sereno. If we were even to dock out 10 million for 170 homes here in El Sereno, let alone our California coast here in Venice, 3 miles, we could house, we could create the jobs, we could thatch roofs, we could fix windows and doors and mitigate soil for gardens. We could do all that, community-based response. But Newsom needs to be redirected. So I dropped in the chat azul.org. That's the organization that's leading the conversation. We will be going to the California Coastal Commission in the month of October. It would be an honor to have Azul present to this group the next time we meet, so that way they can give you a really well-informed water report. Lastly, I want to hand it over to Peggy. I am involved deeply and immensely with unhoused or housing issues. However, she's been on the front line this past 3 weeks. Thank you. I am Gorilla Food Not Bombs and Peggy Santa Monica Food Not Bombs. She's my sister from another mother. She's honorary Chicana. Go ahead, Peggy. Much love.
The organization that I'm involved with and organizer with is called Venice Justice Committee, but I'm also the steering committee rep for Venice for services, not sweeps. And I recommend that using that as the website, services not sweeps I think org. Anyways, what's happening in Venice is that it's now the front line for the homeless issue. Everybody's using it, and it's moving really hard. LA is moving very hard and fast into more criminalization. A new law 4118 is now coming up for second vote, and only 2 city council people voted against it. And both of them are being recalled because the anti-homelessness pro-criminalization movement is so strong that now anybody who wants to get reelected is going to go along with it. So they're going after the encampments, that it's about visual irritation. So anything they could do to remove visual irritation instead of worst first, right? We should be helping worst first. And what they're doing in Venice, and he's one of the few city council members that voted against that new really horrible law. It's unfortunate that he's one of the least worst city council people we have, is now trying to mitigate what's happening on the boardwalk with all the houseless people by giving hotel rooms $5 million, right, on temporary hotel rooms. And then after that, vouchers, housing vouchers, when there's nobody's going to accept these vouchers. Very few people will accept these vouchers, and all these people have been criminalized. The tickets go to either warrant or collection. They're not going to get approved with these records. So, I mean, it's just a crazy situation. And the fact is we need permanent housing for whoever it is that's on the street. And, whether it's a person with major mental illness, whether it's a person with drug addiction, I don't care. We need housing, zero income, and we're not doing it. What we're doing is squandering our money on temporary band-aids or criminalization, lots and lots of criminalization. So they're doing these sanitation things, right? And they say, oh, the news comes, everything. Oh, we're going to get them storage. We're going to get them hotel rooms. Well, guess what? They're coming at 3 o'clock in the morning and doing the dirty deed is what the truth is. And then their social services are coming with them and saying, oh, well, there's outreach. They're working directly with the police. The whole thing is completely insane. And they recently did this little approved some kind of little pilot project for cahoots. Well, that's a joke, right? It's just another ridiculous band-aid, and we're not addressing the situation. Any housing that's being built is using this private public partnership, which we all know is really private. And so we're really trying to push for real solutions, permanent housing, and not the crap that they're doing right now. So that's what's really the truth about what's happening in LA and Venice. And Venice is really hot right now. You've probably seen us in the news. We're hot because they're all coming after the homeless.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for your work. I do want to introduce our next speaker, who is been patiently waiting here. His name is Reverend William Moses Somerville. He's a congressional candidate for the 47th district in Long Beach, California, and it's called the Serve the People campaign. Reverend Somerville was inspired by Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign bid in 2016, and he served as a Sanders delegate. He has championed progressive values such as the $15 living wage, free education from kindergarten through college, reparations, undocumented immigrant justice, ending for the forever wars, and housing and healthcare as human rights, including Medicare for all and housing as a human right. So thank you very much for being here, Reverend Somerville. Tell us about your campaign.
Thank you, Sandy. I'm going to try and keep it, I'm going to condense it because I know our scheduled time was to end at 1, but I'm just grateful that God made Lerna. I'm so glad you all exist because for all intents and purposes, some of us come from different faith traditions. As I am introduced as Reverend William Moses Somerville, I can say I'm so glad you all exist because you all are doing the heavy lifting. Thank you, Liz, for giving us the background regarding Community Land Trust, which is obviously intertwined with water. I had a role model who shared with me that when we often talk about social justice, it's often said, the analogy being, it's one thing to give a man a fish, but it's another thing to teach him how to fish. And they say that's social justice. Well, my role model would push back, and I would push back on that to say, that's not social justice. That's just teaching you skills. Because what social justice is demanding that the water be clean in where and what we're fishing in. And so that's the push, that's social justice, that's social advocacy and work. And that's obviously tied to my campaign around serving the people. I'm running in the 47th Congressional District, which consists of West Orange County and Long Beach, which consists of Long Beach and LA County. I serve as a pastor, a hospice, hospital chaplain. I'm a veteran, I'm a father, academic, husband, and just a lover of people. The top issues I'm running on is Medicare for all, climate justice, comprehensive reparations, voter rights protections, homelessness, and obviously all of these issues that I'm fighting for and what I'm pushing for is to basically get money out of politics. That's really even why I'm running for Congress, because on the local and state level, we're too, especially out here in California, we're too corporate money drenched for just simple noble legislations to go forth, which takes me back to, as I was hearing Ms. Leticia share about, once again, thank you for doing the heavy lifting, all the same. I'm running because we need elected leaders to move with a sense of urgency. That's just the problem. The qualifications that position me at this time goes back to me being born in the Midwest. I consider myself a Midwestern kid from Illinois. So shout out to all my Illinois people, especially Chi-Town, where I went to grad school. And it was at grad school there in Illinois, and obviously where I grew up. After going to college in Arkansas in the South, I was fortunate enough to attend the church known as Trinity United Church of Christ, where the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright Jr. was the pastor, who is infamously known as Barack Obama's former pastor. And it makes sense that you get corporatized, you're gonna have Dr. Wright as your former pastor, including myself. So wanna lift that up. But it was through him I further learned and was entrenched in knowing that faith and politics, they go together. And you can still understand how your faith expression can inform your political expression, still affirming and knowing that there should be separation between church and state, especially when we talk about the Black church. What made me come to this point to run, as I shared earlier, I served as a hospice chaplain for 15 years. And we have Medicare for the dying. It's a very robust form benefit of healthcare. And so clearly, as I was fortunate enough to be elected as a delegate with the 48th congressional district. We have Medicare for the dying, but I'm just like, we can really have Medicare for the living, hence Medicare for all. Because I've seen firsthand how, like I said, how our tax dollars literally infect, inform, and change the way people exist and live. And it's like I said, it's unfortunate it's for the dying, but why can't we do it for the living? Especially when it comes to funding social services, mental wellness services. As I shared, I'm a spiritual care provider, fully funding us. As a hospice chaplain, unfortunately, I was not compensated well. I worked with the agency for 5 years without an increase in pay, without an increase in benefits, with no benefits, with no vacation time, and not offer full-time work. Clearly, racism incorporates that all the same. Let's not act like capitalism, fascism, and racism are not cousins or wedded siblings. So with that said, I'm calling everyone to join in the campaign. You can find us at www.somervilleforcongress.com, last name spelled SUMMERVILLE. Our campaign slogan simply is serve the people. I really want to hone in on that, and that's my platform. That's clearly what I'm invited for, serving Black African Americans, serving First Nations people, because we know Christopher Columbus got lost when he came here, identifying this place as India, and he's wrong. Obviously, Latinx Americans, Asian Americans, women, working people, disabilities, persons that identify as LGBTQ, and veterans and active duty personnel. Clearly, we need to redistribute our wealth. Clearly, we need a new way of running this thing. This is what I love and what I support and serve, and what I'll be calling upon that much more from Lerna to inform how I do my policy making all the same. I'm just glad just to be a witness here, and thank you all for having me. Once again, go to the website, www.somervilleforcongress.com. I am not taking any corporate PAC money, no business PAC money. And I just turned down a super PAC. But had I done that, I'm most certain I would have lost the 150 volunteers that we currently have. This is a people-powered grassroots movement. I'm asking for all of us from LA County and Orange County to descend upon the 47th Congressional District, because our politicians in Southern California ignore us. They do it, I know they do it in Northern California to my Northern Californian people. However, you all do politics very well on the activist realm there, so we try to catch up and obviously expand the squad that much more. And once again, serve the people. Thank you.
Wow, nice. Thank you. I'm not in your district, but give a shout out to you.
I totally receive donations and phone banking. Send them, because like I said, we're grassroots, people powered, and like I said, we clearly need the money. I have a great staff. We're very diverse. You'll probably see in the chat group one of my secretary, one of my campaign secretaries posted our information, as well as my campaign managers on, I believe. But yeah, so let's move. Let's go serve the people.
I see a lot of your crew is up there in the chat. Much love to you. Excellent presentation. Now, as they say, saving the best for last, and really, it's not even really last, but these next two speakers are gonna bring up the rear, and that is two representatives from the Sacramento Poor People's Campaign. Bobby Rainey Clark and Shauna Heckart Penendalius. And I know I said that wrong. Forgive me, Shauna. You'll fix it when you speak. On Bobby. Bobby grew up in a family of sharecroppers and field workers here in Fresno. Her leadership in the housing movement began in the 1980s. with the Oakland Union of the Homeless. In Sacramento, she became a member of the Sacramento Homeless Organizing Committee and has played a leading role in the Sacramento Poor People's Campaign since its founding in 2018. I'm going to do Shauna's as well so that we can hear from both of them. Shauna began working as a volunteer healthcare worker at the Feminist Women's Health Center, Women's Health Specialist in 1976, and has worked in the women's health and reproductive justice movement ever since. Her work naturally extended to fighting systemic injustice in all forms. She expanded the clinic services for over a 30-county area of Northern California, with clinic sites in rural and underserved areas. Welcome, thank you for your patience, but most importantly, thank you for your longevity and work. So Sister Bambi, bring it, and then we'll bring on Sean. And we're gonna bring you all back together to talk about Q&A. So, Bobby, are you ready? And do you need us to unmute you?
Okay, here I am. All right, good morning, everybody.
Hey.
All right, thank you very much. I'm just going to go over some of the things that we've been doing here in Sacramento with the Poor People's Campaign, and to talk about the voting rights that is so much under attack that's going on right now. With the attacks on voting rights, we need to fight the over 400 national current anti-voting laws that are on the books right now, basically implemented in 26 plus southern states. Voter suppression hits Black folks first, and it undermines all people and ends up hurting every one of us. As a member of the Poor People's Campaign, we have identified voter suppression as a part of systemic racism, which has the goal of creating barriers to voting along race and class lines. We have over 140 million poor, low-income people. That equals 43.5% of the population. Therefore, we must continue to support candidates like the one that just spoke, and candidates that will move to support human needs at all levels of leadership. Some of the work of the Poor People's Campaign centered in working with other fellow grassroots organizations like SHOC in getting the vote out through voter registration drives to register the homeless and ex-felons, going out to homeless encampments to let them know as an educational piece that they have a right to vote, and to dispel the common stating that just because you're not housed doesn't mean you don't have a right to vote. We as Poor People's Campaign have held various actions on the steps of the state capitol. One of them most recently was around the Voting Rights Acts, and we included low income and homeless speakers during a press conference to go over the framework of voting rights there at the Capitol, and sending a list of demands up to the legislators when we complete it. The Bible says in Matthew 26:11, the poor you will always have with you. Therefore, we must continue to do our part to seek voting victories as we together push the need to outsmart and to defeat the tactics of the fascist system of governance that has created a war against the working class, working class and the poor. As an effort to overcome this bad history of ruling class methods, we need to continue supporting the voting bills, especially HR 1 for the People's Act 2021 and HR 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Why? We have too much to lose. Just think of some of the downsides of losing this fight for the poor. Hospital closures, bad water, anti-homeless actions, redistricting, and scaling back of anti-poverty programs, just to name a few. We must work by having our activists and advocates and comrades to educate, to speak out, to place the reality of bringing on more legislators like Raphael Warnock and Josh Ossoff of Georgia. That was a winning model, and that we all should follow to ensure that we have candidates that support the needs of the poor. In closing, always in keeping with the party motto of the Poor People's Campaign, everybody's got a right to live. I didn't heard in these presentations, everybody has a right to clean water. Everybody has a right to housing. But in this case, everybody has a right to vote. And that's what we're out here trying to promulgate right now because of all the actions that are against the people. So thank you so much for listening. And we just keep on with the fight.
Thank you for your work, Bobby. Yes, Shauna.
Yes.
To get that name, last name right.
Oh, Pendulous. Pendulous.
I'm sorry,
It's okay.
Gareth.
It's a
Forgive me.
Greek name. Thank you. Thank you. The Poor People's Campaign in Sacramento, I've been asked to speak about, and our work on a grassroots level and report from our community. I just want to say at the outset, these adjectives are mine as part of LERNA of Sacramento, but the Poor People's Campaign continues to be as relevant as the day it was started by Martin Luther King. Everything that we do is to show that capitalism is killing us. And it's an antidote to cynicism, despair, and demoralization in our communities. And here in Sacramento, we are in a unique position of working on the national, state, and local level. And I'm going to also want to credit right now Faye Kennedy, who is our fearless leader, one of our fearless leaders, and should be speaking instead of me, but I'm speaking. Anyway, on terms of what we're working on in terms of the fronts is direct action, coalition building, and movement building. And with the guide is the third reconstruction position paper of the Poor People's Campaign. And I can't emphasize that enough, because without a vision, we have nothing. And if you, as Cat Williams says, if you don't know your enemy, you don't know how to fight. Now we're very active on the local level, and we are replicating many of the cities in the country in terms of coalition building with climate change coalitions. We've been, of course, working very, very hard on the unhoused organizing. And I think our take is a little different than many of the social service agencies, because we are trying to bring in leaders and spokespeople in everything that we do. And we've had a lot of success with this. So every time there's a press conference, we bring in people that are representing the real community. When we have a die-in at the city council, everything is in that backdrop. And we're trying to recruit people as spokespeople and leaders, and have been successful in that. The other thing I think that is worth touching on is that the Poor People's Campaign has been successful in bridging a gap between housing associations and the unhoused, because usually there's an intense friction. But in some two communities here, we've actually been able to work together on cleanup and things that have been unresponsive by our city government. Moving on to our city government, we've been working in coalition with Decarcerate Sacramento and the the People's Budget of Sacramento. And these are incredible groups because they are raising the consciousness of the people that live in this city or county about what does it mean to decarcerate? What does it mean to defund the police? And they've put out incredible position papers, which we've been sharing widely. Even though our victories may be small, but we've had two very good ones. One is that Katie Valenzuela is now on the city council. Now, and Mai Vang is another person who is good. But they're the minority vote. The second thing I'd like to point to is that we've been through Decarcerate and their incredible research and educational efforts, we were able to stop the funding of a jail expansion. So now we have new board of supervisors. One is head of the recall of the governor, Republican crazy person. And the other one is the ex-lobbyist for the California Highway Patrol. So we're a little concerned about that. But, our vision is bigger than these immediate goals, is that we've got to build our community. Of course, we want to influence legislature and government, but building the community is where it's going to last. And I think I should be done, although I was asked to speak briefly about the attack on women's rights and abortion. And I will say a couple of seconds about that. And that is that, we've been fighting incredible odds since the Reagan administration. And the Democrats and the Republicans have been horribly poor on the record of women's rights. For instance, for poor women to obtain an abortion is still illegal to be using Medicare funds. And all they would need to do is change a rider on the budget. And everyone from Obama right to the present day have been unwilling to do so. So now we have a Supreme Court that is very, is going to continue to punish women for having the burden of reproduction. And so all we can continue to do is, or what we need to continue to do, is to elect people that are responsive, to implore the federal government or the federal legislature to work in our best interests. And right now, we don't have enough people to do that. And much of the reproductive justice movement has ended in the courts because the right wing has been this has been a very popular issue, even though it's really window dressing for their real agenda. But unfortunately, they've closed clinics. They know that even though they close clinics and make abortion very hard to get, that women will still seek it no matter what. And basically, it's a punishment and an authoritarian model for keeping women in their place.
Yep.
I think I'm going to stop right there.
Wow, nice job, sisters. I was going to say ladies, and give me a hard time for that. I think this is so important what you both have covered. Number one, I think we have technically, for people who are not aware of the Poor People's Campaign, if we didn't get a chance to show it, but I want to do what Liz did, let's bring up the Poor People's website so that you can go there and learn and build from what are those principles. We at Laney College have found that these have been extraordinarily the whole notion of why and how we might build unity. And I think that that's what the the comments of Bobby and Shauna really share with us that there is a yearning. People don't quite always know how to do that. Sometimes it's the election arena. Sometimes it is the battle of one part of our community, as in the Moms for Housing, taking a bold step and asserting in no uncertain terms, we are human beings and we demand that government represent us. And if government won't do it, get out of the way, we're going to become the government. And we see that represented in a national level. If you go there and not only look at the principles, but if you also look at the projects, the Jubilee Project, and of course now I've gone blank, these guys would know it better than me, but there's other projects that really highlight mechanisms for how do we begin to build. And I don't think it's just small victories. Those victories you listed are big. They're important. That's what we're seeing on these, we just oftentimes we don't know about what that work is that's going on throughout our state, next door, and of course across states. We know what the fascists are doing because they've got these big national megaphones. They've got these well-funded Heritage Foundation and ALEC and groupings like this. But we have our experience, we have our shared experience, our intellect, our ability to figure out what is the way forward. And I think that one of the things we wanted to highlight is that from the Poor People's Campaign to the Sunrise Movement that young people were pulled together, we want to link up, not just link up, but elevate what is the message and the effort for building that broader unity. And I think the other thing that we want to talk, this question of the leadership of those who are marginalized and the most impacted. You can see that has been a thread that has developed throughout this, and where and why we're not confused. We know that the democracy that the rulers have given us is one that is shallow, but we know that when it is denied by law, that they use that then to crush all of us. So the question is, what is that relationship? And so with that, I'm going to shift to my co-moderator, Sandy, to bring us into the last segment of questions and answers, and to bring all the panelists that are still with us together to speak to that. So I'm going to shift this over to you, Sandy.
Thank you. And
I want to say thank you. Yeah, I want to say thank you. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, with your permission, because we're running over slightly. If we run over around 15, maybe 20 minutes, I want to sort of get some sense from the panelists and people if that's acceptable to you.
You have to put your hand up.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to do it. And so I wanted to, I had a couple of questions I wanted to ask. One is, there's a lot of commentary here, and there's been a lot of discussion about how broken the system is and how much injustice is out there. And so I know there's a lot of people out there that ask this, and I know the panelists probably don't believe this, but I would be interested to hear people comment on it. And that is that the system is so unjust and so broken. Why is it still important to run for office? There's a lot of people who say, oh, the politicians are all corrupt, so it doesn't do any good to run for office. So I'm really interested in why people think it's important to do that. And any one of you can go ahead and comment.
Yeah, I would love to respond to that. This is Leticia Vasquez Wilson, and I am an elected member of a local water board. I served on also a city council. And one of the reasons why it's so important for us to continue to run for office is because we will be represented. We'll be represented on these boards, whether it's a city council, a school board. We will have a voice and we will have a vote on the issues that matter. In fact, 20 years ago when I served on the city council in Linwood, which is named the city of Compton, I had no defund the police thing going on. And we removed millions of dollars from the police budget and put it in parks and recreations because we understood the problems that were happening at that time, you know, with law enforcement in our communities. So I think we can be effective, and we can get things done by running for office and being in these positions. And even when we're not in the majority, such as now, I'm not in the majority, I'm in a position to get access to information, to get access to other politicians, where I can use my voice and my vote and my level of support to influence them. So I just really believe that it's critical that we continue to run our candidates and that we continue to have a voice on these issues in government, on water boards, you know, on recreation boards, you know, on city councils, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's very important that we continue to run for office.
Thank you. Is there any of the rest that want to comment on that?
I'll comment. Why is it important to run for office? Let's use the platform and the pulpit, right? Also, for me, my goal is to coalition and consolidate progressives into one place, because we're stretching ourselves a little thin. Let's just be honest, right? And so that's why I shared earlier in my presentation, I want to consolidate folks and progressives and radicals and revolutionaries on this district to educate the district. We take the district and we permeate it out into the regular fields and things of that nature. Also, what I can guarantee for me on my end is that I will have someone from my office out of the volunteers that I've already acquired in our campaign at municipal meetings, city council meetings, and those gatherings saying, we're here representing Congressman Somerville. And clearly, if you don't get your act together, he's going to speak on it and bring voice to this. So that's why it's important to run for office.
I'd like to add something.
Go ahead.
Okay. Two things. One is the right wing I've watched for 40 years, and they start out at the school board level and influence everything that happens to our children. And critical race theory now is on the forefront of our fight, you know, so you have to run for city council, you know, you don't get appointed, you have to run. So on every level, it's important to have people running. However, they have to have a progressive group behind them. One, to win, but two, to be accountable. I learned long ago, it's not I, it's we. It's got to be we. And we think this, and we think that. In fact, if you listen to Katie Valenzuela, most of the time she says, well, we think that this should be one way or the other. So I also, you know, I think we are all discouraged by the Democratic Party because you have to give them millions of dollars and then they control everything you say. You know, should there be a third party? Hopefully someday soon that will happen. But until then, of course, we've got to start not on the local, the statewide, and the national level. But it can't stop there. It has to be working in conjunction with community activism. And anyway, I'm done.
Yeah,
Sandy,
thank
I'd
you.
like to, can I share from Oakland's experience? Because I think it's, you know, we started out with our councilwoman, Carol Fife, and she was recruited to that seat based on the fight that she and so many others led for housing for the poor in our city. And one of the things that she right away did was to work to break the isolation. She says, I can't get the things that the people need just with me. I've got to be able to link up with the other people. And I think that speaks to something that all of the panelists have addressed. And that is this question that, look, we know that who's running our city councils, our various local governments is corporate America. And they have deep pockets, and they are you can't even call it corrupt. They have it as business as usual. They're not about to allow us to elect them out of power. But what does the running of the people of Mr. Somerville's and many others and the Carol Fifes is that we have to combine it with what Shauna's saying, this question of a really though a movement that holds the process broader than just one or two individual organizations. It represents that we are stronger together when we can build our unity around our identified efforts, our identified interests, and we can combine what in the old days we would call street heat with the policy pursuits that are in tandem. That's when we have differences. Right now, as we speak in the city of Oakland, what the police did after this small reapportionment of funds to public investment, the police department called for a public event where they're supposedly supporting public safety. It's really an attack on the progressives on our council, and our community is standing up and saying, you know what, we're having our own event at Lowell Park, it's a different park, and we're for public investment. This isn't a quote unquote tit for tat, but it's to elevate in the way that our councilwoman advanced. What are the real issues? Either you're going to fund our schools, our libraries, the people who take care of us, nurses and other folks there, or we're going to fund these big corporations that are killing us with contaminating our water, et cetera, that everybody here knows. But we've got to get that formulated into not just priorities and policy, but into political organizing and getting to the depth of what the problem is. So you know what, we're going to have to ride this horse all the way through. Yes, just by getting on there doesn't mean that we, quote unquote, that the power structure is going to cede power. No, that means that we continue to really teach other revolutionaries in the way that the pastor was just saying, you know, that we can have a different future, but we have to be clear and united. And that, of course, is what one of the essence of what Lerna's programmatic proposals are about. So I think that I keep kind of trying to bring it back to our city, because no one city can do this alone. No one state can do this alone. The rulers can make an example out of any of our local municipalities, but one of the reasons that Lerna is really focusing on the people who are challenging the Democratic Party, who are challenging and elevating what are human needs, government for the people's needs, is because that is how that's the path to power. And I mean by our class power. So I think that we're seeing that play out. We want you guys to know the real deal that's happening in our city. We want you to visit our councilwoman's Facebook page and any of our other places so you can help counter the arguments that say we're just a bunch of crazy radicals here in Oakland. We've defunded the police. That is not what has happened, but it's servicing a purpose, just like the attacks on CRT are servicing a purpose to rally white supremacists to elevate their effort.
Okay, I'm going to ask one question, and this is kind of what you might call a softball question in a way, and it's to see if we have any, and I know we do, but to see if we have any preachers out there among our panelists who want to respond to it. And that is it even possible to win? Is victory possible? This is a country with hundreds of years of genocide, slavery, Jim Crow, racism, oppression of workers. And is it possible for the working class in this country to unite? And is it possible to win? That's my question. Reverend Somerville, or go ahead.
Okay, you want? Let's go with ladies first. Shauna.
Okay. Am I the lady?
Weren't you gonna reply? Do you go by?
But
okay, yes, I want to honor your pronouns.
Go ahead, Shauna, and then Reverend Somerville.
I'll answer after Shauna.
Well, I think that the reason why we're even asking this question is because our country is wrought with cynicism. And the reason why I know this is if you travel to other countries, you will see the lack of that, especially in Central America in places that are burgeoning revolution or have had a revolution. We've never had that here. We've just had colonization after colonization after colonization. So we've never had a revolution. So we don't even know what it's like. But I can tell you that these are the steps that need to be taken on every level for systemic change to ultimately have a revolution. It's very hard because we are actually, the United States, I believe, it's awarded to be cynical. People think that, oh, it's really cool. You know, you're like, oh, it doesn't matter, everything's fucked. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that. But, you know, and that's actually considered sort of cool. And it's not an appropriate question. We just have to keep moving. But we have to have vision, we have to have clarity, and we have to have a class analysis. And we have to know our enemy. And if we don't know that, we will go in the wrong direction. I can guarantee you, I've seen it happen in my women's reproductive movement. The whole thing went to hell because white middle-class women sided with the people that wanted to control the population. So absolutely, we're going to have change. We just have to have the right consciousness and the right analysis. Enough.
Hey, Reverend Summerhill.
Yeah,
to
also
answer.
make a comment? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. Why pursue this? Why push for this? That's the question, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Because contrary to popular belief, we are engaging our human nature, our human right. It's not human nature to be evil, diabolical, corrupt, and X, Y, and Z. We are engaging in our human nature rights. We're acting out of our human nature. Once again, I follow the tradition of the Baptist preacher, Reverend Nat Turner. And contrary to popular belief, even though he was known to disrupt and kill white people, I'm not trying to kill white people, just FYI. The end goal was reconciliation. And that's the new America I'm looking for. That's the new America I want to live in. A reconciled America where there's liberation from oppression and liberation from oppressing. Because you cannot have reconciliation if you cannot have those two things in concert with one another.
Thank you. I had Leticia. Hold on.
Yes.
Leticia.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to say that we can win. We can win. And I won without establishment support. When I ran for city council, I ran against two political machines who each spent over $100,000 to try and get their candidates elected. I won with $30,000. I started early. I started 2 years before the election. I laid the groundwork. I raised small money from many different people, family, friends. I was teaching in the community. My students helped me start walking the community a year before the election. We beat back the big interest in the city of Linwood when I ran for office. And I know of many other examples across the state of California and the country. And so I think it's possible. I believe that it's most possible in the local elections, like the school districts, the city councils. We need people that are going to come in and analyze the voter data, help us create grassroots movements to get, walking in our communities, get, knocking on doors, coffee clutches. It's possible, folks. It's possible. And we just need to keep pushing our people to run for office and providing the support that they need for their campaigns so that we can continue to be successful.
Okay, thank you, Leticia. I think it's time for us to wrap this up. We have one final, very brief speaker, Kathy Venn, who's going to give some information on the League of Revolutionaries for a New America. Kathy?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Well, the thing I hate about the League is that nobody wants to talk, So I got a minute here and I'm going to repeat some things, but you're just going to have to listen because I don't know how to cut this up any differently. I could start from the end of my spiel and go forward and then you can just mute me. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead. So I'm Kathy Venn. I'm coming to you live from Los Angeles. And I want to thank everyone who participated today and all of you on the Zoom call. It was just wonderful. And Reverend Somerville, you love Lorna, we love you, and I think we're making some bonds here. Yep. In the League, I want to just give you a little information. You've heard it sort of today, but I'll sum up a few points. In the League, we see our role as revolutionaries to participate in and clarify the motion taking place in society. We work with all organizations, all groups, and any individual in this fight who wants to also break away from the capitalist, the corporate dictatorship, and their two parties. Mm-hmm. We now find ourselves in this very confrontational, uncompromising fight for basic needs. And it has to be uncompromising because our class is suffering immensely, as is the planet. Yep. Our paper, Rally Comrades.
I think she wants you to put up the Rally Comrades.
Yeah, put up the Rally Comrades.
There we go.
There we go. There's a website. It talks about the political crisis, the continued violence our class undergoes for the right to vote. We see fast-track fascism, the only form of rule left to protect the rulers. Its stranglehold on our country's wealth and its stranglehold on our country's wealth. The property, the wealth that should belong to all of us is privatized. That's our system. It's controlled by a government ruled by corporations.
Yes.
The economic violence of a government that refuses to meet our basic needs for safety, education, healthcare, food, and housing must be exposed and done away with. As all the panelists today really spoke to far better than I can. But so I think this last question kind of goes into that. Can we win? How, kind of goes into, can we win? How do we win? So how do we do all this dismantling of a corporate dictatorship? And I think what we have found is that we have to win our critical mass of our class over to a new vision, a reimagined world. And so many people today spoke to that and did such a great job. The technology is doing away with the need for so much human labor. We're at the beginning of a crisis, but we're at a very pivotal point in the crisis. It's a powerful learning moment right now, as the Rally Comrade says. It's a powerful moment for us to learn, to teach, and to act. To keep on track of breaking away from the corporate rulers and their two parties, we need a careful strategic analysis of forces. And Shauna and other people mentioned that. We use, as Kimberly Moses, I thought, put so great, I actually got to be on a committee with some Oakland folks, and it's funny. It's fun. It's not funny, it's fun. But as I say, I'm from LA, whole different world. but she said, study is direct action.
Mhm.
Study is a revolutionary act. And we in the LRNA really see how important this is to keep what we're saying and doing on track and to not get lost.
That's right.
And most importantly, and I think this goes into the question of can we win? How can we win? Is that it gives us, and by us, I mean the working class and all our brothers and sisters, it gives us inspiration. It gives us vision to a future to save ourselves and to save this planet. How much motivation do we need? We're going under, and we are going to find a way. We are finding a way, that is the study of society and how things change. But history's on our side. Nothing's automatic.
That's right.
We unite with you all today and want to build on those victories that have been achieved. Our study and analysis is putting us on that path to unity. The common plight of our class enables us all as a class to figure out where we want to go and who we want to be. So I hope you'll go to the Learner website, as you see, subscribe to Rally. Even if you don't, you can read every article ever written, I think, on rallycomrades.org. You'll find timely articles as well as historical ones and analysis.
That's right.
We will continue to have dialogues like this, and here we have Ruth Wilson Gilmore coming up, just absolutely mind-boggling. We're so happy to have another really good dialogue on the 17th. But we welcome your participation and your leadership, whether you're coming to meet us as an individual, to work with us as an organization. We want to work with you. Your contributions are welcome and needed. However you would like to contribute in whatever way is open. Our wallets are always open. So also to meet with you and to have dialogues like this is just very exciting. But get in touch with us. We want to work together. You can attend a local collective LRNA committee meeting, a study group. Let's make plans together to go forward. Let's make this fight for the battle for democracy and economic security real. We want to win.
There you go. Okay.
Amen.
There you go.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to close out our program now, and we have a final word. The ones who always have the final word are the poets, and so we have a final word from Adam Gottlieb from Chicago. I guess I assume he's a colleague of Michelle Salturos there. So Adam, do you have a final word for us?
I do indeed. I'm gonna strum these strings while I say it too.
Amen.
I am a colleague of Michelle's and a proud member of the League, and so happy to be here with y'all. Thank you for this great conversation. There's the lyrics in the chat. This was inspired by our work in the Chicago Union of the Homeless, and particularly our president, Bonnie Contreras, who often invokes the first three words of the preamble of the Constitution, we the people, and reminds us how sacred that concept is. So here we go. We the people say we are here to stay. We reclaim this space for the fan. We will make our stand, rightfully demand the right to be human in this land. my union fam, we've been having union dreams, waking up with visions of the world I'm meant to be, waking up with visions of these pretty city streets with no tents, canceled rents, everybody's got a key and we're finally free. Whoa, woke up in that bitter dawn of 2021, mid the ruins 2020 left for everyone. In the wake of all the pain and the hope that also comes with the morning glow, here we go, another trip around the sun, revolution. Whoa, yeah, we the people say we are here to stay. We've reclaimed this space for the fair. We will make our stand and rightfully demand the right to be human in this land. All right, one more time, you can sing it with me. Here we go. We the people say we are here to stay. We've reclaimed this space for the fair. We will make our stand and rightfully demand the right to be human in this land. Oh,
Adam, hello
Amen.
from Lama. Hello from Lama.
thank you
Hello from
everyone.
Lama.
Solidarity.
Hello, Adam, go flip. Hello from Russia.
Thank you, presenters. Y'all were the bomb. Awesome. Thank you so much.